welcome back to Kim Talks All Things Real Estate. I'm your host, Kim Hayden. I am super, super grateful that you are taking the time to join us today, be it live or on our audio recording over on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. So, it's all about real estate and every aspect of real estate. And this is where we invite real estate leaders to come share their stories and insights so you can see the human behind the key, the person that makes the difference, and how they can serve you so you can be wealthier within your real estate efforts. So before we get started and introduce today's guest, please check out queenofresilience.shop. A lot of sass, a lot of fun. It's in our online store, queenofresilience.shop. And by the way, we're launching shortly an entire real estate line. So, the real estate hustle, a lot of fun, So do check it out, queenofresilience.shop. So straighten your crown, shop around, queenofresilience.shop. So today's guest is a fellow Canadian. So this is quite exciting. We have agents and developers from around the world that join us here on the podcast. But today our guest is Terrie Shauer. Terrie Shauer has 20 years of experience in real estate, is real estate investment and property manager. Terrie is a CEO and founder of My Room Gestation, a property management and real estate consulting group based in Montreal, Canada. She is the leading authority in applying mindfulness principles to real estate investing and has written the #1 best-selling on the topic, Mindful Landlord. Co-host of 2 wealth and real estate podcasts, the Mindful Wealth Podcast and the Real Estate Investors Club podcast. Her clients include business owners, executives, and professionals who want to hedge the rat race and gain financial freedom through real estate. Her passion is to help fellow investors act for both profit and peace of mind. Her key areas of expertise are real estate with a focus on holistic wealth, financial freedom, female excellence in investing and beyond. And she has given keynote addresses at the Canadian real estate conferences on these topics. Terrie holds a PhD, SFU, I believe is the university. We'll have to get that information. And master's degree from Oxford University. Gotta love that. She is a 2-time world champion in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Oh, that's awesome. So you know what, folks? You're with me. You're learning about Terrie as I'm learning about Terrie. And that's the cool thing about my podcast here. She is the author of the best-selling book, Mindful Landlord, is currently available on Amazon. And we're going to dive into that in just a bit. So Terrie, welcome to Kim Talks, All Things Real Estate. So excited that you're here. As you just heard, I'm learning along with our audience, and I am open. My mind is open. Please make it full.
Good morning, Kim. That's a heck of an introduction.
Well, you give the information. I was a Dr. Seuss, a proficient Dr. Seuss reader to my children for years. So I love reading a good bio, and yours is an awesome bio. So we're going to just really dive right in because we all have busy days. Terrie, who are you?
Okay, so I guess, an investor and a real estate person, because I've worn a lot of hats over the years, who started my career in property management. And basically, I've mostly been in more low income spaces. And so as an investor and a property manager, I've eked out a pretty decent existence in that for the past 20 years. And then I would say in the last 5 years of my journey, I've become increasingly interested in this aspect of mindfulness and in this aspect of looking at the big picture and understanding how the little actions that we take as investors, brokers, managers, those kind of things actually impact our well-being and the well-being of the communities around us.
Absolutely. You talk about mindful. I heard a great quote the other day, and I'm looking up right now, to be mindful when your mind is full, when your mind is full. And I know somebody actually shared that with me the other day, and I thought that was brilliant. How do you do mindful real estate? How do you do mindful investment?
Yeah. Well, so, mindfulness is kind of a broad concept that you can apply pretty much to anything in your life. And basically what it is a different kind of awareness. So we spend a lot of time in real estate or in pretty much anything trying to get a lot of stuff done, right? Like trying to check off our to-do list, make the next phone calls, send out the next emails, like get stuff done. But we don't zoom out and train our awareness. And so when we talk about training awareness, what does it mean? It's techniques to quiet the mind. It's a sense of connection. So doing various exercises that are going to allow you to see how you're connected to your community, how you're connected to, the people that are close to you, how you're connected to your business, and connecting with your own desires, as opposed to having this kind of storm of the outside world invading your headspace. And so, like, basically, there are a set of practices that you can do to learn to become more mindful. And then it's to apply that in whatever aspect of your life you want to use it in.
And with the constant kind of inundation that we get from HGTV and the news and everything else. So there's a couple things I'd like this is going to be a twofold question, or comment, right? You said low income spaces. The low income spaces of 36 months ago are no longer low income. Um, and when we talk about mindful practices with our media barraging us a lot of times with false information or half truths, how do you navigate that knowing that our low income spaces for a lot of cities are no longer available? Right? It's just not there, which then leads us into now we're into development. Now we're into, seeking other areas in further out areas. And how do you counter the half truths or misinformation, or even that I just closed a multi-million dollar in my car on my phone with no socks, right? So how so I have some issues. Share with me, talk us through that because the market has shifted drastically
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
even just the last year.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, look, I think this is a very complex and fraught issue. And I think, like, you're asking like a very broad question. So I'm going to try to like bring it down and like kind of parse that
Perfect.
apart a little bit. Because I think, if you're talking about like how the media frame things or how we frame things, and then you want to spin that through mindfulness. So I think the first most basic thing I would say is that there's no easy answers. And I think part of the problem in our understanding of real estate, like our understanding of so many other things, is that we want 15-second answers to everything. And we try to make our understandings of things 15-second understandings of things. And so when I talk about mindfulness, it's also about zooming out and looking at the macro, right? And so, for example, in this like low income housing space or affordable housing space, there is this kind of two solitudes. So on the one hand, you have this like kind of a bit, greedy, pernicious investor logic, which is purely financial. And it's looking at, okay, how can I gentrify this as quickly as possible? How can I optimize this building by, changing things? And then you have the housing policy on the other hand. And so we as a society have made certain decisions. And, I've just actually been reading about this. It's super fascinating. So like we've made a decision that housing is a commodity and people are to be housed by private industry. And so those historical decisions like are 100 years old and go back to the beginning of the welfare state. So as a group, we make those choices. And then the individual financial actors, us, the landlords on the one hand and the tenants on the other, make their decisions within that framework. And so it's difficult to try to understand, like the problem of like affordable urban housing, because that's really what it is, without going into the history and then without understanding the industrialization and all these like kind of big trends that have shaped what we're seeing on the ground. And so it's not good enough as a landlord to yell at your tenants and be like, what's wrong with these people? They don't act in their own interest. And like, I could tell you some hair raising stories from like just this week of stuff that, I deal with in this, managing low income housing. And then on the other hand, you see investors that like act in a financialized way that is also not understanding of the impacts of community, like what our financializing actions when we treat housing purely as a commodity, what is that doing to our communities, right? So it's really
Absolutely.
zooming out and getting out of this Twitter 160 character or understanding, like trying to understand these major 100-year-old issues with 160 characters. It doesn't work.
And you know what? I do want to tap into that because you actually just touched on something that we have seen a huge shift in. Not only are we dealing with inflation and all these other things on one side, and a shortage of housing that anybody that's in real estate has known that this has been looming for us for a long time. We've now shifted from the typical industrial age, which has governed the way we earn our income for the last 160, 500, whatever, right? You've had to live and where you work, right? And that has now shifted into the age of knowledge where for a lot of people, they don't actually have to go into an office anymore. They're not going to go into the office anymore. How is this affecting affordable housing, investment, those types of things?
hmm Well, I mean, I think if you're talking about like, there's a new class structure, right? And like on the Mindful Wealth podcast, which is one of my podcasts, we get in kind of into some of this stuff. And so we actually just had a really great guest on who wrote a book called The Precariat, which talks about the changing class structure in this like post millennial kind of moment. And so I'm going to try to do this really quickly, but like he argues that there's about 20% of the population that's like part of the laptop class, right? And so like we are these people who can, work from anywhere. We don't have to go to an office. Increasingly, we don't depend on wage labor. We own assets, be that stock portfolios, retirement funds, properties, that kind of stuff, right? And then we have everybody else who is moving into what's called the precariat. And so the precariat are, the clients of affordable housing, let's say, but all the people who actually do have to show up on the job, people who have to drive Uber, people who are still dependent on like kind of wage labor, but wage labor that is no longer unionized and no longer kind of beholden to all of these welfare state structures, right? So, I mean, how do we map that onto what's going on in housing? Well, I think that like 20% of this, like, you could call it, the guy calls it the solaria, right? Is like the people who now own the assets and whose wealth is not connected so much to wage labor. Well, we're the ones who are busy acquiring real estate in order to, better our situation and watch those asset prices rise. And that basically the way in the post-industrial age things are moving, becomes a problem for this group of people called the precariat, who we now find ourselves housing, right?
Yeah.
And so all of these social problems, be it mental health, be it increased, concentrated poverty, like all of these problems end up meeting each other on the ground in housing, the same way they do in policing, the same way they do in mental health, where you as the landlord kind of end up mediating a lot of these social problems and making decisions that affect people's lives based on the social structures that are behind them.
So would you say based on this conversation that we are seeing a further division in wealth?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, the pandemic has accelerated this, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to resurrect the statistics. But like, if you take that, I think, in the Canada and the U.S., I don't know the U.S. stats so well, but in Canada, I think property values have increased by 30%. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty
basically,
much the same
yeah,
in the States.
yeah. So everybody who owns property has now seen their net worth jump. What do you think has happened to everyone who doesn't own property and who doesn't own assets? Well, like that disparity has just become this much bigger, and the ability to jump between the class of people who don't own assets and those who do, if the step used to be this, the step is now this. And so we're creating not necessarily this huge wage disparity, but we're creating an immense wealth disparity.
Yeah. So then in steps alternatives like REITs, real estate investment trusts, in steps alternatives like uh, collaborative projects. Can you share with us a little bit? Because a lot of people don't know what a REIT is. I've had people go, "Is that a pyramid scheme?" So, can you share with us maybe some alternative options to people becoming a landlord or a property ownership? And maybe these are longer, have longer plays in them. We're not looking at a 5-year or a 10-year. Maybe these are a 20-year investment, but it still gives them something at the end of the day.
Mhm.
What are some of the
So
alternatives out there?
yeah, I mean, I think basically what's buried in there is a question about the barriers to access, right? Like if
Correct.
today you're living in, again, my examples are Canadian, but you're looking at like, in Toronto or like the big urban centers where over 50% of people live. A lot of people are no longer able to position themselves and close on assets in those areas because they're too expensive. So what are your choices? Well, if you want to be a landlord, one choice is either like syndicate, make joint ventures. So it's possible to pool resources and consider purchasing something in those areas with other people. That's one option. Another option is look in maybe like less desirable or secondary markets. So there's like often places that are, you know, a little bit further out, or, you know, for us Canadians also, there are like smaller areas of the US that we're able to invest in for less money, right? And so it's identifying those areas where you can, things are still affordable and within reach to you. And I'm having more conversations like that with my clients now who live in the big urban centers of Toronto and Montreal. I'm in Montreal, about what secondary markets can we look at now that the $200,000 property in Montreal is doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
So
I know that from a market like Wichita, Kansas, where I'm originally from, my brother-in-law has 21 doors. Um, I know that you can still purchase a single detached property that would rent for 950 or $1,000 a month. You can still purchase that for $140,000.
mhm.
It's just, so and I understand that there's advantages for foreign investors in the States that not necessarily are available to all Americans.
Yeah, I mean, so look, I'm not, the person to necessarily advise on cross-border investing, but I think like if you want me to like maybe present some of those other options, right? So this is like
Sure.
the two that I discussed are kind of if you want to really put on the landlord's hat yourself. But if that's too much work for you, or your let's say your capital is too small for that, REITs are a possibility. And basically, what a REIT is like a trust, it's real estate investment trust, and they basically behave kind of like stocks, except that you own a portion of a real estate portfolio. And so like REITs have, they will focus on specific geographic areas, and each one will have, different kind of ROI, like, different stats based on where they are positioned and what their angle is. So, investing in a REIT, if you have, let's say 10K and you want to invest in real estate without being able to close on a building yourself, a REIT is always an option. And then there's also, all these other kind of more financializing stuff with, purchasing notes or doing like lending with various stuff. And that's a whole other, like there's so many ways to make money in real estate. You don't necessarily have to have 200K in your bank in order to close on a 12 unit property for yourself, right? Like if you only have a small amount of capital or not so much borrowing capacity, there are other ways. You just have to be a bit more creative about it.
And I think that goes with where society is sitting these days. I think people are getting creative. They are doing 2 and 3 side hustles. They just need to know that there's options,
Mhm.
and that there is a possibility, because that is, no matter how far fetched the prices get for for that first time home buyer, the first time property owner, there still is that goal, that dream, right? And that is the dream of property ownership.
Mhm.
Um, so if you're enjoying this conversation, please do like, subscribe, comment, and share with the Kim Talks Resilience YouTube channel, with iTunes, Spotify, everywhere that we're at. Do support us, because that's all we ask. It's just that you give that support. So the next thing I do want to ask, because you are a wealth of information, and you must have started like, so first of all, SFU, is that San Francisco University? Where is that?
Simon Fraser University in Vancouver.
Oh, it's in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Sorry. I yeah, like I said, grew up in Wichita, been in Canada 20 some odd years, and I still, it's those, the pre-frame, your origin story tends to be your go-to on everything. So, uh, very well educated. So we're not talking that it's just somebody who's gone out and gotten a real estate license or a property management. You were very mindful in stepping into this space because you came with the education. And I'm not discrediting anybody that does not have the extent of education that you have, because there's a lot to be learned from people who learn it on the fly, build the plane while they're flying, right? But there is something about formal education that gives you a understanding of systems and analysis
Mhm.
that is very hard to acquire while you're building the plane and flying it,
Mhm. Yeah.
while we see
Yeah.
a lot of entrepreneurs. So when we're talking systems and the application of knowledge to be able to relay this information to your clients, and a lot of clients that you probably deal with are probably entrepreneur minded, so they came not through university but through the school of hard knocks. How do you engage with people and share the information and present the options and opportunities?
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think it also goes with people's interest, right? And I think if I think maybe down the line there's a question coming about my superpower, but if I might talk out of turn, I might bring that in
You're
now.
good.
Yeah.
Anytime.
So, so I think my superpower is really this kind of like macro perspective, right? And so, like, my PhD has nothing to do with real estate. It's like something really in the social sciences. And so, like, I have this, 10-year training in understanding how societies fit together. And that goes with economics, and it goes with understanding some of these macro patterns that lets you cherry pick things in an intelligent way, right? Or like when you see now we're looking at, inflation, economic downturn, and we're seeing that, like, a lot of my clients or my network will call me and just be like, Terrie, what do you think is going to happen? And I will be like, okay, let's back the truck up 15 years. Look at this, Great Depression, da da da. And because there's this whole like structure behind it, it allows me to kind of like cherry pick and like give sort of my theoretical framing of why and how I think this is going to happen. And so, how do I then pitch that, or how do I frame that for people? Well, I think it's to know what level of answers they need, right? Like, it's possible to give a very simple answer if someone has a very simple question, and then you can kind of read if someone wants to understand the why behind something. Well, like, then, okay, let's have a coffee, and I'm going to take you through a 1 hour history class of whatever. But I think, that's really partly why I wrote the book Mindful Landlord, and why I have those two podcasts, which, so the Real Estate Investors Club podcast is really that very practical information. What's happening in the Airbnb market? What should I do about this particular problem? And then Mindful Wealth is really this kind of macro question of like, what is our historical moment right now? What are the big tectonic shifts that are happening? And how do I position myself in there in a way to, act effectively for myself and my family, and then also not do it in a way that's socially irresponsible? So it's kind of a long answer, but like, I
No,
think that
that's
really,
awesome.
if I have like, my grain of salt to like, put into the world in this particular thing, like, that's what it is. It is to be able to connect the everyday decisions we make with these like kind of macro level questions that I think a lot of people don't ask themselves. And like, I think, if I can argue for something, like, we really need to do that, because sometimes you can be doing something down here and you don't understand what are the full implications of that, or like what's really going on. And so I just want people to, be curious and not accept black and white easy answers to things.
And I love that you say be curious, because the talk of resilience and the talk of curiosity has been very much that is what I'm seeing in the space of knowledge consistently, is that resiliency to come back when you get what some would deem a failure, but it's actually feedback, and the curiosity to quest
Mhm.
for more answers. Can you share with us who can be your client?
So I'm trying to actually reduce my property management portfolio now. I've managed for clients in the past, but now I'm trying to kind of reduce that a little bit. Um, what I'm trying to do now really is get some of these ideas out. And so, like, really, the podcasts and the book are like where my focus is. And to me, it's more a question of ideas at this point. I'm not necessarily trying to serve people so much on the ground as a broker or as a property manager. I am on the lookout for people who want to do, joint investment deals. And that is after after we get to know each other and they've been in my sphere for a while. But really, I'm trying to, have conversations and get some of these ideas out there, because I think our industry is sorely lacking this mindfulness fact of understanding what's the big picture, and like, how are my actions affecting the world around me.
Are you traveling, speaking, coaching, doing any of those aspects that we're starting to see experts like yourself, industry authorities, is are any of those available? And if
Mhm.
so, like
Yeah.
aside from the podcast, Is there anywhere that somebody could come and purchase a ticket and see you? Is there anybody, is there a coaching
Yeah,
opportunity
there's
where
coaching.
they could,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, I have a coaching and consulting tab on my website, so you can go to terrieshauer.com and check that out if you're interested in that. As far as speaking, I admit I've just been too busy promoting the book, and I need to get on the speaker circuit. That's going to be the next to do for the second half of 2022.
awesome. Um, Now, when we talk about the coaching, who can approach you for coaching?
So anybody who's interested in, working on this kind of mindfulness mindset aspect of real estate, really. I mean, obviously, I can help with more nuts and bolts things, putting together joint ventures. Like I do know how to do that, but I prefer, or like I'm interested at this point more in coaching some of that like mindset stuff, and like helping people make sure that whatever their real estate projects are fits in with a more holistic vision that they have for their life. So not, I call it the bank account Olympics, right? Like I think often in the real estate industry, we get wrapped up with the 3Ds, more deals, more dollars, more doors. And that can actually kind of pervert our relationship to it and make it that we're super stressed out and not actually getting the freedom and the peace that we hoped we would get when we got out of our job, right?
Absolutely, because that's real estate, any aspect of real estate is not a job. It's definitely a lifestyle.
Yeah.
What would you do if you weren't doing this?
I'd probably coach jiu-jitsu full time.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about jiu-jitsu. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
So, I mean, I've been doing combat sports for 20 years. I had a career as a semi-pro kickboxer for like, I guess, my 20s. And then I wanted a retirement sport when I got done with boxing. And then I started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it's kind of like between judo and wrestling. So I've been doing that for like the last 10 years. I run the women's program in my gym. No, it's just, I find it a lot of fun. And I think it's also another way of helping, especially like, my female angle, like helping women develop confidence and, have access to a sphere in which they can really become excellent at stuff. So,
Amazing. You're like an onion. Just keep peeling back. There's
yeah.
another layer and another layer and another layer. Real quick before we close, you must be doing this as, totally single, no kids, no obligations, nothing out there. You have
No,
no.
no, no,
You have
no.
you have
I have
other
I have
stuff
a
going
kid.
on
I'm
in your life?
married.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm learning here is that the answers are out there if you choose to look for them. If you are either a real estate professional and want to help guide your clients better by ensuring that they're getting the right information and have the right resources, ensure that you are finding individuals like Terrie that can actually give you that information so you're not misspeaking to your clients and directing them down a wrong path. If you're in real estate and you're on that, doors, dollars, and deals, let's get off that and maybe simplify your life a little and say one door a month is going to be applied to my future wealth and my foundation, because I know too many real estate agents that have that, they get stuck in that cycle themselves, and basically they're next to, they don't have anything at the end of the day, so they work until they're 80.
Yeah. And if I can just add, it's really a question of metrics, because I think, if we're in this, like, this hamster wheel of deals, doors, and dollars, it's like, because we're focusing on those metrics, that's the only thing we use to measure our success. But if our goal is peace and prosperity and these things that are like a little bit more, calmed down, then we need metrics on that axis. So you can't measure your bank account and think that that's going to bring you well-being. If you want more well-being, you need well-being metrics. And so it's really important to examine the goals and examine what you're measuring when you're trying to succeed at something, because if you're trying to, succeed at this over here, but you're working over there, it's never going to happen.
Absolutely. It doesn't align. This is the point where I always ask a quote. And like I said, yesterday, the quote I learned was, work to be mindful even when your mind is full. And which is, it's just fortuitous that we would meet today. And I would learn even more on mindfulness. So what is a quote that gets you moving forward?
Yeah. So, I thought about this when you told me this question was coming at the end of the interview. One of the things we say around the office a lot is you can't save them all. And what that refers to is, be it my clients, be it my tenants, it's really about the line of responsibility. And I think in this industry, we end up, especially if we're ambitious, we end up putting ourselves on the hook for a lot of stuff. And, me as like a coach now, I always try to give the best advice to my clients. I always try to steer them in the right direction. With the tenants, I always try to deal with them in a way that's fair. But ultimately, it's their responsibility what they do with that information. Just like my responsibility stops after I put my action into the world. And so it sounds like kind of a trite thing to say, but like, it's not my responsibility to save everybody I come in contact with. It's my responsibility to provide them with good information, and then to listen to the information that comes to me, and not proceed with my preconceived ideas and just, go into the wall. Right.
Absolutely. And that actually, I'm going to close this out on boundaries. Last night I was on a call. It was actually a really amazing call. And one of the things that we were brought up was boundaries. We don't put boundaries in place. And yet boundaries properly respected and clarity around them can create greater connection with the people that you truly can serve. So things I learned today: be mindful. Know that there are options out there if you know what you're looking for, and find the people that can guide you on it. Talk to Terrie. If you really read her book, listen to her podcast. Terrie, again, the name of your book is?
Mindful Landlord.
And where can we find that?
Amazon.
Amazon. And what's the name of your website?
TerrieShauer.com.
Terrie Shauer.
On there.
Right there. It's right there, folks. We're going to have all this in. And we're going to just close this out. Again, I'm Kim Hayden. I am the host of Kim Talks, both resilience and all things real estate. And my entire goal here through Kim Talks is to ensure that you have the resources, know the people out there who are just like you and I, who are living their greatest life and have really great insight, intel, and stories that they can share, that if you just meet the boundary, if you step into it, if you perform, they can guide. So again, Terrie, any closing words you'd like to share?
No, I think I've said just about everything. Thank you.
You're amazing. Thank you for sharing your time and your absolute excellence, and doing all that you do, and enlightening me a little bit further, because every time I get to learn something, makes my day a bit better. So thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Alrighty. Until next time, be sure that you like, subscribe, comment, and share. I'm Kim Hayden, and this is Kim Talk.